VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. We have a depth chart. I told you there'd be one soon. I thought it'd be yesterday, but it did arrive on Wednesday. So we have tangible evidence of all the stuff we've been studying for 5 months since free agency kicked off. So I wanted to highlight one guy in particular. It'll be Lucky Jackson. We'll get into that in a few minutes. And I want to explain why this is a big deal for this guy, this 28-year-old wide receiver, upstart wide receiver at Vikings training camp. So we'll spend the next several minutes talking about Lucky Jackson. Lucky Jackson. This is the Lucky Jackson episode. But first, you know the drill. I got to promote this book of mine. I wrote my first debut fiction novel, and it independently published it on Amazon. It is a one-night thriller suspense mystery set in South Dakota. It's on Amazon for $4 if you read books electronically. You can get it through Amazon Kindle for free. I think that's how that works. And then the paperback is $14.99. But as my first foray into fiction, I'm going to write 2 fiction books per year for the rest of my life. I should have quite the catalog before too long. Hopefully you enjoy the writing like you enjoy VikesNow, assuming that you do. That is the promo for my book. Go read The Motor Out by me. Now let's talk about Lucky Jackson. So to level set, in addition to a couple surprises on the depth chart like Gabriel Murphy is evidently the 4th pass rusher. I thought it would be Bo Richter. Nope, it's Gabriel Murphy. Silas Bolden, buried on the depth chart, is like the very last wide receiver. What else? Zamiah Vaughn, who is a lot of folks' training camp darling, CB9 or some shit like that. But the biggest takeaway to me is Lucky Jackson, the guy, the wide receiver. So to level set, based on the way the Vikings structure their depth charts, it's in plain view on Vikings.com. Lucky Jackson in the here and now is the WR4 for the Minnesota Vikings. And that's noteworthy. We're going to talk about this a little bit more because Jordan Addison will miss the first 3 games of the 2025 season. He's not going to appeal his wetness and his recklessness that he fired up 13 months ago in Los Angeles while asleep at the wheel on some freeway. So Lucky Jackson is your WR4, believe it or not. The reason that this is noteworthy among several items that we're about to discuss is 2 months ago, pick the time on the calendar, OTAs, mandatory minicamp. You could pull up ESPN's depth chart, ourlads.com, any Vikings depth chart out there when you Googled it, and he was like WR7 at best. It's kind of like the order was Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor, Ty Felton because he's a 3rd-round rookie, Rondale Moore because everybody knows him. And then it was a total crapshoot after those, 5? And Lucky Jackson, who's been attached to the roster for a couple years, you just kind of assumed, why would it be any different this year? So, at the high end, he was a WR7. And bada bing, just like that, on a Wednesday in August, 3 days before the preseason starts, the guy has been elevated, promoted to a WR4. This is a testament to his training camp. So if you've been to training camp, if you watch a show like this, there's a decent chance you've been to training camp. He's played great. And sometimes, whether it's the preseason or training camp, it's weird. It doesn't directly translate to roster movement. I'll give you an example. Was it 2 years ago? I think Albert Wilson. Vikings signed him as a free agent. The dude scored 2 touchdowns in a preseason game. We're like, yeah, we got our WR4, WR5, and they cut him 2 days later. There was another defensive tackle. Was it T.J. Smith? I think he had T.Y. McGill. I think it was T.Y. McGill had a really sweet preseason a couple of years ago, sacks, the whole bit. Boom, cut his ass. So a lot of times it feels like, although the preseason and training camps certainly matter, sometimes what you see with your very eyes doesn't necessarily get parlayed into a depth chart spot. This is different. Lucky Jackson has done the thing. He's the WR4 for these Vikings. The reason we're doing an episode like this is because he is ahead on the depth chart of Ty Felton, 3rd rounder from 4 months ago, 3 months ago, and Rondale Moore, who was supposed to be the next big thing coming out of the 2021 NFL draft from round 2. And if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, right before training camp started, is Lucky Jackson going to be on the depth chart ahead of Ty Felton? I would have bet you $700, and you would have taken my money from me. So, it's really, really odd that this guy has climbed the depth chart like that. He's never played a regular season game. I want to keep hyping up this guy because it's so remarkable, at least from a preseason standpoint. He's never taken a regular season snap, and he's 28 years old. There are very few circumstances, unless it's like a long snapper or a special teams guy that nobody cares about, of a guy blossoming or getting this type of promotion, elevation at the age of 28. But I'll be damned if Lucky Jackson isn't doing that. Let's go through his resume. Let's see. I think he's undrafted from Western Kentucky, I think it was. 2020. So the same draft class as Justin Jefferson. That's how old this guy is. If you think back to the 2020 draft class, Jeff Okudah, Viking, Jalen Reagor, former Viking. Those guys, that is when Lucky Jackson wanted to be drafted. It just didn't work out for him. So he remained unemployed in 2020. No team took the plunge. And then he ended up in 2021 with the Spring League Blues. Do you know what the fuck that is? I don't. Never heard of it until I was doing my homework on Lucky Jackson. And then he went to the Edmonton Elks in 2022, another thing I know nothing about, probably the CFL. And then it got a little bit more familiar. I know what the DC Defenders are. That was the XFL, which is now the UFL. And he played so well, turned so many heads in the XFL that season, that he signed with the Vikings when that league wrapped up in the spring of 2023. And here he is. So it's a true rags to riches story for a guy who's 28. This would be kind of a nothing burger if he was like 22. I'd be like, oh yeah, sweet, a UDFA really climbed the roster. It'd be awesome, but it's almost unprecedented that he would be 28 and finally getting the chance to be this high on the depth chart. Now, of course, he's got to play well here in the preseason and still earn a roster spot. It would just be really strange for the team to put him at WR4 only to cut him in what, 2.5 weeks. Thankfully for Lucky's sake, I think his name was Don. I think his real name is Dontavius Jackson, but we're calling him Lucky. That's what he goes by. He has all kinds of time in the next three preseason games to make a dent. You're not going to have Justin Jefferson play because of the hamstring tweak, and he probably wouldn't have played if his hamstring was in fabulous shape. I don't know if they'll play Jordan Addison. They don't usually play starters, but it sounds like O'Connell is softening a little bit to that. But then, if you're not going to play Jefferson and you're not going to play Addison, then you're going to play Naylor and the out of nowhere W4 Lucky Jackson. So Lucky is going to have probably time with JJ McCarthy, like to build some chemistry. We know McCarthy will play some drives on Saturday. And 3 preseason games is a long time for these dudes that are unsung, that are hoping to stand off the page to make the 53-man roster. So in these games against the, Texans, Patriots, and Titans, I believe, you're going to see a bunch of Lucky Jackson, and good. We want to see how it translates to a semi-realistic field. Not for nothing, because Jordan Addison certifiably will be suspended, Lucky Jackson could be the WR3 by the time the Bears and Vikings play at Soldier Field on September 8th. Why? Well, because everybody at Addison's spot or below, so Jalen Naylor, Lucky Jackson, Rondale Moore, I don't know who else would make the depth chart after that. There's probably going to be one extra guy, Tim Jones or somebody. They're all going to get promoted for 3 weeks. If you do the math, it's really elementary. If you're the WR4, Lucky Jackson, that's what he is right now. Well, you're going to move up to WR3 because Jordan Addison isn't there, and Jalen Naylor will go from WR3 to WR2. So when we get to September 8th, and then the game after that against the Falcons, and then against the Bengals at home, Lucky Jackson on a regular old August night, it's WR4. He could be the WR3 for 3 weeks, which only heightens this little miracle for him, and see if he can really make this thing into a bankable 3-game little sprint. So a couple more things about Lucky Jackson. He's a speed demon. Just like Isaiah Rodgers, nobody cares that he has like 4.28 speed. Lucky Jackson, leading up to the 2020 draft, at his pro day ran 4.36 40. And I don't know, at 28, what do you slow down? Maybe it's a 4.4, 4.1 now. So the guy is fast as hell. And then he's also like standard receiver size, 6 feet, I think 200 something pounds. I think, unless I've totally misjudged this, that if Mr. Mankato, that award, that mythical award, matters to you, Lucky Jackson kind of has to win the thing, doesn't he? Like he went into training camp as somewhat of a footnote in a very busy wide receiver room with like 12 wide receivers, and he's clawed himself up to WR4. So if the folks, the powers that be, I don't know if it's Score North or whoever is officially in charge of the Mr. Mankato Award, should be called Mr. Egan, but that doesn't sound as cool. Lucky Jackson should win the damn thing, right? I mean, who else would win it? Throw out some names. And a couple other things I want to say about Lucky are, yes, I fully understand that this is only a first depth chart. This is an official but unofficial depth chart that the Vikings put out. But there aren't too many examples of relative unknown guys like Lucky Jackson getting a lot of clout on the depth chart, getting a lot of promotion, and then that being a farce afterward. It doesn't usually happen that the Vikings will say, "Hey, Lucky Jackson, you're the WR4. Just kidding, we're cutting you in 2.5 weeks." It's usually the other way around if this depth chart isn't right. So, for example, Zamiah Vaughn, the undrafted rookie that there's a lot of folks that think, "Hey, this guy can ball. They should keep him on the roster because if he gets to the practice squad, somebody's going to steal him." He is the type of guy that this depth chart suggests he's buried as all hell. Silas Bolden also buried at WR9. That doesn't mean those guys are screwed. That doesn't mean those guys are cooked. It's just that they haven't got the necessary love and attention on the depth chart just yet. So there is still time for guys who you thought were good to make the roster, or like Bo Richter, he's the OLB 5 or OLB 6. There's still a chance that he can make some noise in the preseason and get OLB 4, but there's not many examples in recent Vikings history where a guy like Lucky Jackson is plopped into a role that we're like, what? He's the WR4 or that guy is the CB3. You don't have too many of that erroneously and have the team walk it back 2 weeks later and they cut his ass. So I think this climb is legitimate. Now, whether or not he's good in the regular season, no clue. I hope he is. I hope he scores on the first play. But I don't know if it will translate to long-term success. I'm usually skeptical. It's like I'm skeptical about Jeff Okuda right now. There's a lot of people that think, well, because he's connected to Brian Flores, this is Jeff Okuda's breakout year, and everything's finally going to make sense with that guy. I tend to doubt that. I learned a lot from the Irv Smith days when every summer we looked like chumps foreseeing his breakout season, and it never happened. I tread gingerly now with forecasting these big breakout seasons for guys that once had fancy draft stock. So in that regard, Lucky Jackson still has to be good when we get to the regular season, but he's in a really sweet spot. And then finally, this is just kind of a parting little thing. He has the name. Lucky Jackson. That is something that you will remember for a long time, especially if he makes the roster and scores a couple touchdowns in the regular season. It's almost like the Pastronaut when Josh Dobbs, broke out into miniature stardom for 2 weeks for the 2023 Vikings. There aren't too many dudes named Lucky in the world, and it just so happens that the Vikings employ one who has climbed from like WR7 on a good day to WR4 with the training or with preseason 3 days away. Excuse me. So that, my friends, guys and gals, is why we needed to talk about Lucky Jackson. Kudos to him. This is what training camp is all about. This story right here, a guy that casual fans have never heard of. And if they keep at arm's length the Vikings football until the regular season, like, most normal people in the world who like football tune in for the games. It's the weirdos like you and I who watch podcasts and do podcasts like this. They're going to show up to week one, Monday Night Football, September 8th against the Bears, and be like, Lucky Jackson, well, that's a hell of a name. And then you're going to figure out whether or not he's good. All right, another time, read my book. It's called The Motor Route. If you like mysteries, slow burn type of thrillers, The Motor Route, it's got you taken care of. It's my first stab at fiction. It's 300 something pages. I think it's pretty good. Hopefully you do too. That's all I got for this Wednesday night. Happy Death Chart Day. Skol, baby.